Kevin, good morning. Good morning to everyone. Good morning, Facebook. Good morning, YouTube. We're about to begin our morning devotion. It's late, but and I am yet to get ready. But nevertheless, let's go. Let's see how quick we could get this done so that I can begin my day. And whosoever will be listening to this, they could listen it probably on your way to work or so be it. But I am, well, as you can see, I'm nowhere near it. But um, nevertheless, we thank God. And so I was saying that this morning there is an all right, there's an announcement that I have to make before we begin today, and I'll make it as well after. Today we are going to be on 98.1 FM. For those that listen to 98.1, we will be on the midday program Woman of Promise with Lady Madonna J. So you can, if you are someone that listens to 98.1, you can tune in and hear what we're going to be speaking about. It is promised to be an enlightenment to you and to your spirit, right? So we're going to be discussing changing your mind, changing your mindset, changing the way that you think in order to get the desired results that you need to see or get for your life, right? So, so we're gonna be on 98.1 at midday today. So separate from that morning devotion, let's get it in. Today we're going to be discussing for our morning devotion, yes, devoted to God, but you becoming a better person mentally and actually setting the lines and boundaries of who you are, what you're supposed to do, and just becoming a better individual. That in itself is praise and worship unto the Lord thy God, right? So today we're going to be discussing self-preservation versus selfishness, right? Self-preservation versus selfishness. Now, the thing is about selfishness is someone who may be selfish or carries selfish traits. Um, One thing someone who's selfish don't like to do is actually admit that they are selfish, right? And but the thing about selfishness is it is more identified by the receiving person or the person who can identify the selfishness rather than the person themselves. There is also a point in time that God Himself makes you aware that you are a selfish person, in which in that moment is when He is ready for you to correct yourself. In that moment is when He is ready for you to put down selfishness and actually consider, consider other people, consider other circumstances, and even though in a season or in a situation things may not be beneficial to you in the moment, it is not that you do whatever it takes for the situation to become beneficial to you. No. Apart from that not being an attribute of God, that also is something that has a high penalty to pay, because it means that you will do absolutely anything to ensure that you shine, or to ensure you get what you want to get, or to ensure that somebody don't rise above you, things like that. So selfishness is a very, very dangerous character trait to have, because a person who is selfish can kill to get what they want. A person who is selfish will go to ends to destroy someone to get what it is they want or to get the desired result of the desired result that will only be beneficial to them. That's the thing about selfishness. Selfishness is all about you and you alone. It doesn't have an end product whereby it flourishes or it goes out towards other people, but it protects you, it protects maybe your accolade, it protects maybe your job spec, something, right? So we're going to discuss selfishness and self-preservation too. So the first reading that we're going to take this morning is from Genesis 4, verse 7 to 8. Now it's a scripture that I know we all are familiar with, Cain and Abel, right? So the reading says from verse 7, if thou doest well, shall thou not be accepted? And if thou doest not well, sin lieth at the door, and unto thee shall be his desire. Unto thee shall be his desire, and thou shalt rule over him. That's a very important statement, right? As it pertains to selfishness. And Cain talked with Abel his brother, and it came to pass when they were in the field that Cain rose up against Abel his brother and slew him, meaning he killed him, right? But paying attention and focus to, and unto thee shall be his desire, and thou shalt rule over him, right? The desire of that selfishness having rule over you. This is a perfect example of the definition of selfishness. Because God accepted Abel's offering and he didn't accept Cain, Cain had some hard feelings. Cain felt as if he was the one that was supposed to be accepted, or he was supposed to be accepted as well. So this is why I say selfishness. Selfishness and the definition of it is the embodiment of self. See, the thing about it is, even though this has passed how long, no matter how long your act of selfishness has been displayed, God remains God. See, God doesn't have, He doesn't operate like us, nor does He think like us. In a moment such as this, where Cain murdered Abel because of this selfishness, it puts now the fugitive and the vagabond shall thou be in the earth was the curse that God placed upon Cain. So immediately you see where when you are selfish, you run the risk of curses being attached to your life. Because this curse that God put on Cain, not even if somebody wanted to kill Cain, God would have turned his wrath against them. So it shows you that even in your moment of selfishness, even in the time when you are selfish, yes, I'm speaking of that time where you may have had an unguarded moment of selfishness. You may have had an unguarded moment of selfishness whereby you wanted something for yourself or you gravitated towards it. Yes, this morning devotion is digging us out, digging the things out and pouring fresh oil in. Because the first place we got to come to is a self-awareness of selfishness to know the difference between selfishness and self-preservation. So in the moment in time when you committed a selfish act, the part of the act that you committed, even though it was so long, you may have forgotten about it. It may have happened so long, And it may have been that somebody would have identified that you were selfish and they have forgiven you. They have moved past there. But the thing about this God is, if you did not recognize your selfishness, one, because even in this moment here, Cain did not take on the task of recognizing his selfishness. Because when God asked him for his brother, he turned and he asked God, am I my brother's keeper? So, in other words, he had an attitude, he caught an attitude in the midst of his selfishness. The thing about the selfish act is if you have never brought yourself to a realization that you committed a selfish act, and in committing this selfish act, whether it is you recognize something was about to happen, and whatever was about to happen was not in your favor. So if you can't captain the ship, everybody must sink. That being a selfish act, even though it was committed quite back, quite then, and you are somebody that didn't seek the forgiveness of God, that still hangs over your head from since then. Even though the people as well may forgive your selfish act because they would have identified that you were selfish in the moment, God still remembers the selfish act that you almost sunk an entire ship because you couldn't be the captain. You couldn't come to a realization that there was actually a captain that was supposed to man the ship in which you wanted to, one. Or if it is you recognize somebody's going to get a blessing and you want the blessing. And this is how people that end up in the juju house, in the obia house. This is how people that end up working witchcraft and iniquity against other people who are either about to be blessed or is blessed, because there's a measure of selfishness on the inside of them that mean that their brother or their sister or whomever must not rise because it's not them. It's a hard thing, a hard posture. Selfishness is a hard posture. When the word of God says that the heart of man is dangerously wicked above all, who can tell it? But God can tell it. God can tell our heart. He who is God also said, he also told Samuel concerning David that I found me a king in Jesse's house. He found a man after his own heart. So the posture of David's heart is what captivated God in the moment for God to be able to say, this one has my heart. So it shows where God will put you on a scale and weigh you. Is your heart selfish in the moment when you realize everything is crumbling, when you realize things are not going the way how you wanted to? Would that selfish nature, would that natural man step in and take over and take matters into their own hand to ensure that things go your way? And if it doesn't go your way, everybody must die. The ship must sink because you're not the captain. It's a dread place to be mentally, because it means that so long as your environment or your atmosphere, things that are happening around you, is not going in your favor, it means you can break down mentally, totally, and you become a risk to everyone that is around you because the circumstances are not in your favor. So, selfishness and the identification of it is what we have to identify in our hearts. The remedy for selfishness in this case is a nature of love that parades your heart so much that even if you have a moment in weakness of selfishness, that love is able to overpower overpower the selfishness whereby you wouldn't pull your brother down, whereby you wouldn't drag your brother name in the dirt, in the mud, whereby you wouldn't kill somebody because somebody is, in this case here, you feel as if either Cain felt as if Abel was favored and he was not. So you kill somebody because you feel that they were favored more than you. Take care, people, that our hearts and our mind is not in a selfish place, that we will do whatever it takes to be basically in a self-satisfactory place. Because to always want to be in a self-satisfactory place, it means you now leave out the fact that God is never able to break you down, to build you back up, to make you a greater vessel than you were before. Selfishness always seeks to preserve self in the current moment, self and self alone, the survival of self. The remedy is actually giving that to God. It must be identified because, as I said earlier on, someone who is selfish doesn't necessarily like to admit that they are selfish. But it takes a measure of self examination and assessing your heart, because everyone knows what is the wickedness of their heart. Everyone knows if it is you're somebody that you don't like to see people prosper. And if you're going and you're spending money by a obia man or by a juju man or by a spiritualist for other people because that person is prospering, guess what? You're selfish. Unfortunately, if it is that you're seeing prosperity of someone, whether it is you see somebody do something good and the person posts it online, and your heart become cold or you're skinning up your face towards them because they are doing something good, guess what? You're selfish. You're running competition with another person unconsciously, putting yourself now in their lane of the things that God has set them out to accomplish, because you tend to want to feel a form of self gratification. Guess what? You're selfish. So it is good to first identify where we're at. Tell the truth about yourself. Tell the truth about your heart posture and deal with that thing, because that thing could come and become an abscess to the point where when you do it once and you get the desired result that you're looking for, right? You obtain whatever act you did or whatever you did, whether you're pulling your brother, and as a result of pulling down your brother did not get the blessing or whatever your brother's supposed to get. Or, for example, if it's a promotion on the job and yourself and someone else is up for the promotion and you decide you're gonna mash that person in the dirt rather than allow God to be sovereign and make the decision whereby if that is not for you, that God has a placement specifically for you. Now, if you change your perspective, and we're going to be dealing with it today as well, change your mind. We're going to be dealing with that on 98.1 today FM. If it is you do not change your mind, and concerning changing your mind, which now reprograms your heart, it's going to be a sad place to be, a risky place to be, because what happens is, because you recognize with the first instance you got the desired result and you got your way, guess what's going to happen? Every time something comes up and it's not in your favor, you're going to resort back to that very selfish act in which you committed in the moment to get your way again, because you're going to realize that it is the trump card that always works. It is a risk to have such a heart. you expose your brethren or you expose somebody in the moment, and that caused the person not to attain to a blessing or attain to some other level or something. And it worked in the moment. Well, guess what you're going to do? You're going to do it again when a situation is not favorable for you. So it is good now to self assess, access in you the real you, and the real you is the person that may be hiding selfishness, one. And in that way, it also brings you to a place, admit it before God, ask for the forgiveness of the Most High God. That doesn't necessarily mean that you will be totally free from the consequences of what you have done in the midst of your selfish moments. It doesn't mean you'll be free from the consequences, but you have asked for forgiveness, and God is able to see the posture of your heart where that is concerned. And if it is that you have the potential to do it again, because there's always the temptation to go back and do the same thing when the moment becomes unfavorable, even if we have asked for forgiveness. So that's why I said you may not necessarily be free from the consequence, to make sure that you know that there are also consequences to your action. If it is that you are one that may be privy to going back to commit the same act again, even after asking God for forgiveness, right? So it's good to have that self assessment, ask God for forgiveness, to create in you a clean heart, renew the right spirit within you, so that the presence of God does not depart from you. So that when you identify that selfishness, you ask God for forgiveness, ask Him not to take His presence from you, so that that love can now be cultivated in you, so that the love would now be way more than any selfish act or any selfish thought that you would ever have. Right? So that is the moments that we deal with the selfish nature, selfishness of, I guess, the human nature, the natural man. Right? So that is selfishness, and now we're going to go on to the self-preservation. Now, the as I would call it, a thin line between the two, between the selfishness and self-preservation. I wouldn't necessarily say a thin line when I think about it. You just have to be able to differentiate that which is selfishness and that which is self-preservation. Because the thing about self-preservation is selfishness is one that is fearful of the future. Someone that is selfish, most time is always fearful of the future. For example, look at somebody who is cheap, somebody who hands tight with money. That person is somebody that is fearful of the future, because they are afraid that if they give you the money that they have, they may not have anything for the future. So somebody as well who is selfish with money, tight hand, they are also one that is fearful of the future. So fear is an attribute of selfishness as well. So self-preservation is one that is necessary. Selfishness is not necessary. Self-preservation is necessary, because in self-preservation you now preserve your own life from the risk of it being either taken by someone, one, and this is where I speak about actually giving of yourself way more than you have for your own self. In one of our previous devotions, we did loving your neighbor as you would love yourself, forgetting the fact that one must first perfect loving themselves in order to be able to effectively love another. Whereby, if it is that you pour out yourself and pour your love so deeply into another without first perfecting your self love, it means that in the event that that person is no longer here, or that person leaves, or that person, you're probably in a relationship with that person, and you is no longer together. That person now leaves with the love that you have cultivated because they pour all into them and you never really learned what is self love. So, self preservation is actually necessary. Self preservation is necessary. It's necessary for your cultivation of the future. It's necessary to protect your life, your being, and the vision in which you have to accomplish on the face of the earth. Whereas selfishness is not that direction, right? So, concerning self preservation, we're going to read from Esther 4 and verse 14. And it says there, all right, we're going to read from verse 13. From verse 13, it says, Then Mordecai commanded to answer Esther, Esther, think not with thyself that thou shalt escape in the king's house more than all the Jews. For if thou altogether holdest thy peace at this time, then shall their enlargement and deliverance arise to the Jews from another place. But thou and thy father's house, meaning Esther and her father's house, shall be destroyed. And who knoweth whether thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this? Now, in these days, the custom was that no one is to go into the king without the king first actually summoning you to come. And what Mordecai was pleading with Esther to do is to make preparation for herself to actually go into the king on behalf of the Jews. And it is something in the beginning that she didn't want to do, right? And at the end of the day, I mean, she's queen already, and it could have been that Esther could have fell victim, so to speak, to being selfish. She could have fell victim to being selfish had she not taken up the words in which Mordecai spoke to her to actually go in, to take the risk to go in before the king, not just for her own self-preservation, but also the preservation of her people. So what I want to say is, in self-preservation, there is not only just self-preservation for yourself, but it is also self-preservation that other people will be able to benefit from. So you preserve yourself in order for others to be able to benefit. So when I said earlier on, love your neighbor as you would love yourself, being that you're supposed to love yourself first and learn that first, it is so that your neighbor will be able to benefit from it. So the self-preservation is actually a benefacting result that causes other persons to be able to benefit from what you are preserving. So the self-preservation in this case is necessary. It's an aspect of life that we must learn. It's a tool that guards our life. It guards our life with respect to friendships, relationships, situations, environments, and even to the point where we love somebody or we love our environment or wherever so much that it could be eating at us. It could be bad for us, but we love it so much. We love it so much that we cannot give it up. But on the backside of it, it is a lack of self-preservation rather than actually foreseeing the damage that can be caused. Because what happened here is Mordecai brought to Esther's realization what can possibly be the outcome of her situation, meaning her life taken, and her father's house, meaning the Jews, right? So what Mordecai did was show her what could be the prophetic word, meaning the future, and if it is she doesn't take measures to self-preserve in order to preserve as well the people, the Jews, right? So self-preservation is that which is necessary in assessing what is going on, where you're at, and how things are actually going in your life, and identifying the threats, not just of the now, but identifying the threats of the future, identifying the things that can be identifying the things that can be a threat to your future, your destiny, and who you're actually made out to be. So self-preservation is necessary. Self-preservation is necessary. If you don't remember anything for this morning's devotion, remember self-preservation is necessary. So devote to yourself and to God that you will preserve who you are and who you're supposed to be in the future. Ensure that you make the decisions and take the necessary actions and precautions that is necessary for you to actually become all that you are supposed to become. Self-preservation also means that you are preserving your now for the person that you're supposed to evolve and become at a later date. So that in itself is a needed skill in life. It is needed. This one is a necessity because we can be in circumstances in that are hazardous or dangerous to our health, to our well-being, to our spirit, and it may not be able to be identified because you never spent time putting the reality of what is actually the reality, not what you want it to be, not what you would love for it to become, but the reality in the moment is what actually saves you way hard circumstances. Because what can happen is if you are not someone that self preserves, you can become the victim of selfishness. That's the truth. If you do not self preserve, you can become the victim of selfishness. So it's paramount that one puts themselves in a place, in a cocoon, so to speak, safely, that they are able to preserve themselves in order to preserve their life. Right? So, in shorts, this is our morning devotions, selfishness versus self preservation, ensuring that you're not found in a place of selfishness whereby you would face the consequences of God. Even when you repent, you may still face some consequences to know that do not continue in such actions, but instead assess your heart, assess your mind, assess who you are, deal with that thing, deal with that thing. Confront yourself if you are a selfish person, because you become a risk to everyone else around you when you are selfish. They don't know what direction you will take next in order to in order to save your own self. Christ was a selfless, the Lord Jesus was a selfless man that walked this earth, and he has called us to carry the same attributes, right? So we're going to end here today, and I really hope that this blesses someone, that you listen to it and you actually take the pointers from it and let it be a blessing to your life, so that you devote these morning devotions. Is not just morning devotions as in unto God, but as it's not just praise, worship, thanksgiving. We bless God, but it is cultivating a better self, a better you, so that God, and that means it is time to go get ready. Right? So you all have a good day. May God bless you all and keep you all. I love you all. And don't forget, we're on 98.1 FM today, Isaac the Promise. We're going to be live with Lady Madonna J on Woman of Promise program. We're going to be speaking about changing your mindset to get the result that you desire. So tune in, and we also have Single and Cultivated conference coming up on the 29th of September. Right? It's going to be a time of mingling, entertainment, discussions, and food, drinks, and laugh. Just pure vibes. So we look forward to seeing you all as well on the 29th. And we also have dream interpretation session tomorrow. So it's not going to be Friday of this week, it's going to be Thursday. So it's going to be tomorrow. We're going to do dream interpretation on animals, when you see certain animals in your dreams, right? So that is where we're going to end up. Let me go get ready. You all have a good day. May the Lord bless you and keep you. I truly hope that His face shines upon you and clears the path in which you have to walk. So I'm hoping that this Facebook Live was clear, because my other laptop, the camera just decided to give out. YouTube, at least this laptop is still on and popping. But as soon as they decide to be obedient now, right? So you'll have a good day.